Hello, everybody. You are watching Beyond the Highlights. I'm your host, Brian Mossallam, with my co-host, the voice of Spartan football, Jason Strayhorn. Hope all is well. How you doing, Jason?
Doing well. How about you?
Fantastic.
Been a long time.
Been a long time is right. Today we have a very special guest today. Fellow Spartan, former four-year standout at Michigan State, where he helped the Spartans claim the 1986 Division I National Championship. Currently, he is the U.S. hockey team's national development coach. He's the head coach of the U.S. national team under 18. And somebody who I remember played at Michigan State, Coach Danton Cole. How you doing, Dan?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me out. Appreciate it.
Glad to have you. Glad to have you. So tell us a little bit about your program and where you grew up, and you're moving on from Michigan State over to.
It's a really interesting program, and it's not hard to explain, but I think at times it's hard for people to kind of understand what we do. And it's one of the very few standing national teams that we have in any sport. And I think there's only two sports that have a standing national team in their own building. And we recently bought the CompuWare building, renamed it USA Hockey Arena in Plymouth. And we play out of there. And our guys come in and spend their under 18 year and their under 17 year, which is basically their junior and senior year of high school, living here, playing here, training, and then we play 3 international tournaments a year, and culminates at the end of their second year with the first IHF sanctioned event for hockey, and that's the under 18 World Championships, and we've won 6 of the last 7 World Championships. So it's a really interesting program. It's been around for 19 years now, and I think one of the interesting facts that we always talk about is that we have usually at any time in NHL between 60 and 70 guys that have come through our program playing at any one time. So it's about 10% of the NHL. So anytime you're watching a game, there's probably 3 or 4 guys on each team that's come through our program. So it's a little bit of a well-kept secret around here, but internationally and within the NHL, a lot of people know how well it's gone, and it's done a lot for USA Hockey.
So these kids actually are taking out of school. They live here. How do they get schooled? Juniors and senior years in high school.
We've had a real good relationship with Ann Arbor Pioneer for the last 19 years, as I said, and we used to split the guys up between Huron and Pioneer, and we're exclusively at Pioneer right now. So we've got a full-time academic advisor, Lisa Valmers, works there. She's got her own classroom at the school. So they go in, they're on the Olympic program. Really, we based our contract and our setup on an Olympic contract that players or athletes sign and live under. So they go to 4 classes a day. They just take their core classes, getting ready for NCAA. And then once they're done around noon, they come over and join us, and we keep a pretty good eye on them academically. And then they get over to us and we start training.
Wow. So when they leave your program, how many of them get drafted, head to some type of pros or head to college? Right.
We average between 14 and 19 of our 22 players get drafted every year, and some of them are draft eligible the following year. So Austin Matthews, who was with our 97 birth year team last year, is probably one of the best hockey players I've ever seen.
Wow.
Wasn't eligible this year, and he's projected to go first overall next year. So some of those guys have a little bit of a gap to fill, so they won't count in the exact year. But most of our guys will get drafted, and I'd say about 90% will go on and play college. There'll be some that play major junior hockey afterwards. The old Plymouth Whalers and the Windsor Spitfires and Saginaw, people are probably familiar with, and they'll go and do that. And it's peculiar to hockey that we have 2 avenues. Most of the other sports, football and basketball and baseball,
right.
it's high school. There's a pattern, high school, and then you either go to the minors or college with baseball. But with hockey, there are some options. But most of our guys go to college. We have a lot of, I think we have 5 guys on our team committed to U of M already. So, they're
Any Spartans?
You know what? Not in our group yet. We're trying. But
hear that, Tommy? Tom Anastas, Dearborn.
So but they go on, play college, and then hopefully they'll start playing pro. My first group that I worked with was a 94 birth year, and out of those 22 players we've had, they're all 3 years out of the program. 14 of them signed NHL contracts, and 8 of them have already played in the NHL, and some of them aren't even 21 yet. So we get really talented young men, really good young men, and it's fun to work with them for a couple of years.
And when you said the most talented player you've ever seen, I want to talk about that guy for a moment. Austin?
Well, I'd say in one of the most in the program that I've seen.
Okay.
I mean, I had the pleasure of getting beat up by a lot of really good players. So I mean, Gretzky and some of them. But Austin.
That's
has
what I was
yeah,
getting at. Gretzky.
In your program.
Austin has a chance to be one of the best American-born players that we've had, and then from where that goes, we'll see. But his accomplishments, the players we've had through our program, Patrick Kane and Phil Kessel, guys that are all-stars and doing extremely well in the NHL. He's blown away all their scoring records, and and did it probably when we're playing in a tougher league than they did then. And I think the thing about Austin that's really neat is that just what a complete young man he is. He's a leader, he's a competitor, and just a fabulous hockey player. So he'll be fun to watch, and he's playing pro hockey over in Switzerland now. He decided he had another year of high school, so he accelerated and kind of got through with that, and so he's playing a year of pro over there. For Mark Crawford, who used to coach the Colorado Avalanche. Some of the Red Wings fans might remind me. So he's playing for him, and then he'll get drafted and come back over here. So he'd be definitely a young man to keep an eye on.
Interesting.
Going back to your days at Michigan State University, I've been reading in the paper about there's a new transformation going on at Munn Ice Arena, and the NCAA just voted about green lines, not allowing green lines. What is that about?
Well, I think it would probably similar to football with is it Boise that has the blue field, and I think that's grandfathered in, and they won't let other, they have their rules, and the way it's set up and the way the NCAA rules is, they give you the dimensions, and so far from the goal line you have 2 blue lines and 1 red line. So the NCAA, which is always so easy to work with and so malleable.
Real easy.
Oh yeah, they're
Super
unbelievable.
easy.
Trust me, I know.
So I think they, unfortunately, thought that it was better to keep everything the same, at least from my reading now. But I thought it was kind of neat, and I thought it would have looked great at Munn.
Let's go back to your days in college for a minute. I don't know if you remember this, but 1995, you were with the New Jersey Devils, and you won the Stanley Cup. I just happened to be out one night, and in comes Tiger Woods to Rick's, and then, I don't know if you remember this, but you came walking in with the Stanley Cup. I'll never forget that day. It was 20 years ago on a Tuesday night. Tell us about that day tell us about winning the Cup with the New Jersey Devils and just the surreal feeling of being a champion.
Yeah, it is, because it's a lot like other sports. You grow up, if it's football, the Super Bowl or the World Series, and the Stanley Cup for hockey players is what you're playing in your basement, and it's always the 7th game, and it's always overtime. And you're down there by yourself scoring the game-winning goal. So, that's something that you grow up always aspiring to do, and you never really understand the feeling until you kind of go through it. And it was a great experience for myself and my family, and just all that I learned there from the management staff, Lou Lamoriello, and the coaches, Jacques Lemaire and Larry Robinson, just unbelievable people, and the guys in the team. So from what I've carried forward in terms of coaching and things I've done, a lot of it is based on that short experience that we had going through the playoffs and things I learned. So it was a tremendous experience, and I think the neat thing about it is you spend, I see you guys got your MSU rings on. You could have told me, I could have brought mine, but you win, and then the neat part is that you spend the rest of your days, whether you're playing or coaching, trying to get back to that feeling again, and it is kind of addictive, and it drives the work ethic, and we talk a lot in our room. It's the next ring that we're looking for. So it's made a big impression on my life. It was a lot of fun, and we had a great time. We had a little get together at our house, and there's 100 or so of my closest friends that were over, and then one of the guys that was there was Joe Goodser, who owns Rick's, and it was supposed to be a slow night, and it happened to be when Hootie and the Blowfish were having the outdoor concert series at Michigan State, and so it ended up being unbelievably crowded down there. They came down, Tiger Woods was there, and it was a pretty interesting night there, and a lot of fun.
The greatest thing about championships is that they're forever. Nobody can ever take it away from you.
That's for sure.
So talk a little bit about growing up in Lansing, playing at Michigan State, and then just kind of like, as Coach D'Antonio would say, completing your circle, coming back, winning a Stanley Cup, bringing the cup back to Lansing, East Lansing for a day. How was it like? Just what was that feeling like?
Well, it was well, first of all, it was a lot of fun, and it's a pretty gratifying feeling, because like I said, that's a goal that you have that you work towards. And but growing up there and playing hockey and going through Glaha, and we had talked about the Millers earlier, and Kelly and Kevin and Kip are real good friends of mine, and to go through that, we went through college together. to come back and bring that back. We were all playing pro at the time, so it did feel like all of us had won it, and we were kind of all sharing it. And the guys that I had played with there, so it was exciting in that sense. Something that we still talk about a lot, and you can't replace it. But bringing it back to Michigan State more specifically, Coach Mason was over at the house, and the impression that your coach makes on you when you spend 4 years with him, and he's certainly one of the greatest. Is something that sticks with you, whether it's playing or coaching or what we're doing in our lives outside of the sport and raising your kids and just being a good young man. And that's that when you say you can play in the circle, and I love Coach D'Antonio and the things he says. And between he and Coach Izzo, I think our guys get a little tired of the quote board we have.
Right.
I'm always putting their articles up, but the things they say, and it was a lot like the things that Coach Mason had said and taught us that we went through. So coming back was great. Michigan State's always been home, and a place that I took a lot of pride in, and we didn't think about going anywhere else with it. At some point, it was going to be around Michigan State when I had it for the one day.
That's awesome.
As a player, you played against a lot of different guys and a lot of talent. What, in your mind, who would be a guy that you would say is the most competitive or talented guy that you've played against?
Competitive, probably one of my favorites is Chris Chelios. He's just a warrior, and I don't think people realize
20-some years, right?
Yeah, 26 years. You
Wow.
watch him play, and you think he's a huge guy. He's not that big, but he played big. He competed. He practiced the right way. He played the right way. You have to be a freak to play that long.
Yeah, right.
God reached down and touched you in some way genetically to be able to do it, but the commitment that he put in and how hard he played, there's not many guys that played like that. Scott Stevens was our captain in New Jersey. Was another warrior. So I think those guys make an impression on you. And then when you see guys like Steve Yzerman, when you go to, okay, here's an elite scorer, and the way that he competed and he kept going for all those years and was a captain and a leader, and got to know him a little bit later on, and then through management and some other things. When you start to meet those guys and what they go through and their commitment to it, it's a fascinating thing, and you understand why they have that talent and that commitment and that compete level, why they're as great as they are. And that's that's what we look for in players. And if you put all that together, it's a pretty fun athlete to coach.
It's funny, in my generation, in Detroit, we've had some great captains, but Steve Yzerman is one player that carried himself with class and respect, and it's amazing the impact he's made in the area. I remember when the rumor was they want to trade him, and everybody they were booing. It might have been Scotty Bowman at first. I think he wanted to trade him out at first, and just Yzerman is revered in this town. Let's go back to your coaching here. So explain to our viewers the difference between the kids that graduate from your program and then the Olympics when they watch the U.S. team play. Right. Why are there two different tracks? How did that happen?
Well, with the program, one of the original, like I said, it was 19 years ago, and the state of U.S. hockey at the time was a lot different than it is now. And we look at it now when we go to the under 18s or the under 20s, the junior tournaments, or men's worlds or the Olympics, and we're in the mix now to, hey, are they going to win it or should they be silver? And we're in the medal talk all the time, and that wasn't the case with 1980 being the exception.
Sure.
We didn't win very many medals in the Olympics. So one of the original charters and missions of our program was to start building the talent base and of the U.S. player, plus to start doing better internationally. And so a real hard name to say, the NTDP, National Team Development Program, but it's very descriptive, and that was one of the charges, was to get our guys understanding how to win internationally, what it took, and to start expanding that base and being better players. So since then, like I said, now we're in the medal discussions all the time. The Olympics, we've done considerably better on a consistent basis. Still looking to get that next gold. At the men's worlds, we've won 2 medals in the last 3 years, which we've never done before. At the under 20s, we had only won I think 1 medal before the program got started, and we've won 3 gold since we got it started. So there has been a trickle down, and you see more and more of our guys now. We understand.
Why is that? Tell me why is that?
I think
resources.
That's a big part of it. I think I don't think we ever envisioned that someday it might happen where everybody on the Olympic team, they're NHL players, comes through our program. But I think on the last one we had 11 or 12, so but a little over half of the team. But I think what helps having our guys through it is they come in and play 6 international tournaments with us, and they kind of go through and they understand how the tournaments work. They understand how the other countries, and Finland is a little different challenge than Russia, which is a different challenge than Canada, and the different way
physicality, speed.
Yeah, physicality, yes. And the Finns, they're not going to give up. If you're up 4-1, they're not going to give up. And the Russians, by the same token, they're never out of a game. They've got so much talent and ability that if you give them an inch, you can't back off at all. So you start to learn that stuff, and that spreads throughout the room. So even if our guys, like I said, aren't 100% of the team, they bring that knowledge base with them and that leadership with them. And I think that definitely helps. And it's also a target for young players. They want to come and play for our program, and they put in a lot of work, and they get there. And if they don't make it, they're a little disappointed, but then there's always the next tournament that they can make, and I think it drives a lot of that. So it's been successful in that sense, and I think we've met some of the goals that we're looking at, and we're continuing to try and get better. But so far, it's done a great job of developing players.
I've read articles over the last 5 or 10 years about the state of U.S. hockey and things that people are trying to do to get the players more acclimated, not burn out. And they're talking about youth players, kids that are 15 or under, playing multiple sports. Where are you in that discussion?
I think and I have 3 daughters, and they did a lot of different sports. I think women's athletics, I think they still do a little bit more. But if I had a son, and I talk to parent groups all the time, I never fail to mention, like, have your sons do a lot of different sports, and don't lock in. There's a certain time you have to. USA Hockey's done a nice job with the ADM as a program we started about 5 or 6 years ago, and it's the American Developmental Model, and based on long-term development of athletes and when you should be doing certain things, skill development, and the progress that should go through. And I think 15 was a good number, building through there, that kids should be playing a lot of different sports. Their gross motor skills, I think, suffer when they do one thing and they don't transfer all those different things. There's a lot of good about playing basketball that translates to hockey, or playing football and learning how to take a hit and to see in a field that translates in baseball and your hand-eye and all those different things. Riding a bike and climbing a tree is good for kids. I mean, we've got them in so many camps and so many structured things that I think we're getting better athletes, but worse players in some way. And so I think we've got down the, hey, how do we make Johnny a super little guy that can do a bunch of stuff? But in terms of thinking the game and going through it, I think we've missed the boat a little bit on that. So that's where hockey's trying to move that back, and USA Hockey's done a great job, and we're starting to see it. It's, like I said, it's been in 5 or 6 years, so some of those players that have been in that, we started with like 6 to 8 year old players. So in the next few years, hopefully, we're going to start to see some of those guys coming through our program, and that's something that can grow throughout the whole United States where they've applied it, and it's hopefully it'll help a lot, and hopefully it'll spread to some other sports.
So when you see the 17 and under, 18 and under, the resources now being dumped into USA Hockey, you've seen the growth of the sport in this country, and you've seen the talent level change so dramatically over the years. Can you quantify for us how unbelievable that 1980 gold medal was in Lake Placid, in terms of where the program was then, now, to back then to now?
Yeah. Well, there's that's a big part of it. I think in 1980 I think there was less than 10 American-born players playing in the National Hockey League.
Wow.
And further in the story, it was a time when there was the Russian team. They were professionals. They just weren't in the NHL. I mean, a lot of those guys they came over and played. They were a little past their prime when they finally got over here, but that was a bunch of college kids going and playing against professionals. And we won't get that story again, unfortunately, because of the change. But I mean, that's what made it so great. But from that, I think that spurred a lot of ideas and a lot of things that we see kind of came out of that. And shortly after that, I think in 83 or 84 was when the U.S. started doing some midget camps, which were kids that are 15 and 16, and started doing some national things and bringing kids together in the summer and starting to build. And that, if you want to look back at what the impetus maybe behind our program was the 1980, and then some of those camps that started, and then it built out from there. So the growth from there, it can't be underestimated. And we had our Congress in June all the time out in Colorado Springs with USA Hockey, and it was 35th anniversary of the '80 team, and most of the guys, I think, other than 2 or 3, were there, and it's just fascinating to talk to those guys and to see, and I think they understand. Maybe after that, at the time, probably as a bunch of 18 and 20-year-olds, you didn't realize how big a thing it was, both in the hockey sense and in a cultural sense. But I think they have a good feeling on it, and they see what's going on with U.S. high hockey, and they take a lot of pride in it. I mean, it's an amazing thing for not just, I think, USA Hockey, but for the U.S., and it's an unbelievable moment.
Where were you when that game happened? Did you watch it?
You know what? It was funny. My dad was a professor at Michigan State, and one of his doctoral students lived out there in Lake George, not far, and he was working the Olympics. So my dad and I went out, and I saw 3 of the games, and then we came back before they played Russia, and we were on our way. It was an afternoon game. We were on our way to Munn Ice Arena to watch Michigan State play, and it was going on because that game was, everybody thinks that game was on TV. It wasn't. They didn't cover that game on TV. It was replayed the next day. So
really,
we got there, and we were kind of keeping track on the radio, and then they announced it at Munn Ice Arena that they had won, and there's a big standing ovation. And times are a little.
Wrote an article about that.
Yeah, times are a little different now than everybody would have had it now, and it would have been, yes, exactly. But it was pretty neat. So I mean, I remember it really well. It was a pretty neat time.
I was 6 years old. How old were you?
I was 4.
Were you?
You guys remember it or not?
You know what? I vaguely.
Yeah.
I do remember. I remember in '84. Then I was 10 watching it, and I think was it Sarajevo maybe?
Could have been. Yeah.
Pat LaFontaine. I remember, and we got smoked out in the first couple games, and they're like, I just remember them talking about how this doesn't even compare to 1980.
Yeah.
But what would you equate that to? Like, is that like Michigan State beating the Red Wings?
I mean, it would be. I mean, that's a fairly good comparison. That would be a bunch of college age, probably younger than the Michigan State's team maybe at the time, because college hockey was a little younger. But it would be that big a thing, and not just doing it in an exhibition game. I mean, doing it on the world stage when it's important and everybody's amped up for it. So I think Herb Brooks was right. They might not have been able to do it many times out of 10, but they got the right night and got it done. That's
60
sports.
minutes,
That's
right? One game.
Score. Yeah.
That's all you need. Is he still alive, Herb Brooks?
No, he's not. He coached for a while and died in a car accident.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's what it was.
After several years. But,
so so when they made that movie about the 1980 team, was he alive or was he?
He was. If you watch to the, if you have the DVD and you watch to the end, he was a consultant on it. But I think before it was released was when he passed away. So there's some interesting footage in the lead actor in that.
What's his name?
I'm trying to think of it. Spending some time with him, and there's some interesting stuff. So yeah, he was involved with it.
So speaking of coaching, who's had the biggest impact on your life? Because, to this day, anybody that's played sports will always you'll never forget your teachers and coaches. And everything you take life lessons from all of them.
Right. There's, I'd say probably 3 guys that really have done a lot. Not just teaching me, but kind of staying and were mentors, and especially now that I'm coaching, it's kind of neat to go back. And Coach Mason for sure, and he's the one guy I played for 4 years. I mean, you go to pro hockey and you're not with the team for 4 years, and if you are, the coach probably isn't. It's just such a short-term thing. But from 18 to 21, that's a pretty formative age for a young man, and just the lessons he taught and the way he handled things, and just the more you remember, it's funny when you leave. It's kind of like your dad. The older you get, the smarter they become all of a sudden.
Sure, right.
And he's been great. I've when I was playing and still coaching, and his grandson actually is on our staff right now, and so we try and keep in touch. And he's made a big impact. Jeff Jackson, who coaches at Notre Dame now, coached me in midget, and then so my sophomore year, and then I also played for him in juniors, and he was outstanding. And another interesting part of that is he was the original coach and one of the guys that started the national team development program. So he was there for the beginning of it and really got it going, and was one of the pioneers there, and kept a good relationship with him. And then the last guy I mentioned I mentioned him before, was Jacques Lemaire. And I wasn't with him very long in New Jersey, but just the way he did things and went about it, I'd never really thought about coaching before playing for him. But that time and going through that and all his knowledge was really interesting to be around a guy. I think he's got 11 or 12 Stanley Cups as a player, coach, and management. He's got more than he has fingers, and there's a reason for it. He's a smart man. And we had our 20th reunion this year with the Devils. And it was nice because he and Larry Robinson were the coaches, and Jean Caron was our goalie coach. And I had a chance, kind of after all the festivities before he left, just to talk to them and tell them that, how much, I'd stole from them first. I guess give them a little bit of credit, but how much they had meant to me.
Sure.
And those are guys I don't see a lot. So it was kind of nice to have them there and just let them know, hey, I'm coaching, and a big reason why is because of the things that you guys did. And I know, as a coach, and I've got a lot of my guys now, I've been doing this thing is my 17th year, that now guys that are coaching and doing some things, and it's always nice to hear from those guys and understand what you meant to them, because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing here. Is it's about hockey, but it's about character, and it's about life, and it's the kind of men that leave our program, and after they've been, their parents drop them off with me for 2 years, and that's a big responsibility, and that's the special thing. So it was good that I've been able to keep in touch with those guys and let them know what they meant to me.
So remember Ace?
I do. Oh yeah, he's a good friend of mine.
Trainer, yeah.
Yes.
So I remember one time when I was playing there, I said, hey, why don't you take a promotion and come over to football? He said, they couldn't pay me enough to move over to football and leave my kids at hockey. And tell us about, just in general, the type of kid that comes and plays hockey, because they obviously come from a different demographic, different background, and tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I think every sport you take a lot of pride in the kind of kids that play, and you relate to them because that's what you went through. But hockey has changed a little bit. Demographics, it's an expensive sport now. Hopefully, I think we're trying to do some stuff so that we don't price a lot of good athletes out that can. I mean, ice is expensive, equipment's expensive, travel now. So hopefully not. But I think overall there's been a general overriding. There is a certain humbleness to hockey players. I think that's culturally. I think that's something that comes out. I think. That there has been traditionally a lot of small town kids that come out and and appreciate what they have, and certainly
Canadians are just so nice.
And it is culturally. I mean that's impacted. You have to say that's a part of what it is, and that kind of transcends through the locker room. I think things are changing. I think money in hockey now is changing. I think that guys are starting to make millions and millions of dollars. We were kind of, I think, as a sport, late to that party where guys, they weren't making a lot of guys worked in the summers when they were still playing pro hockey, and wasn't, hey, I know I signed one contract, I'm good for the rest of my life. So we like to think that. I think every sport probably does though. But the kids that we have and I've been able to work with, they're like just good kids. They do well in school. They do good things outside of hockey, which is important, and we're proud of them as a culture and as our program.
It is. I mean, even at my days at MSU, I would say out of every team, the most well-behaved, the most likable kids were the hockey kids. They were just always good, fun-loving, respectful, and it was always a pleasure to be around them, So it's got to be pretty enjoyable coaching these young men, You make an impact, you leave an imprint on their lives forever. It's got to be just an unbelievable feeling. So 17 years of been coaching. Do you have any aspirations to move up to the NHL at all, anytime?
I've kind of followed an interesting path. I've coached Division I hockey. I've coached in the American Hockey League. I've coached now with the national team. So I've been in a lot of different areas. In the last 4 or 5 years, really haven't looked to do anything different. I really like where I'm at. The people I work for are unbelievable. USA Hockey is. They treat you very well, and they respect what you do, and they give you a lot of responsibility and kind of let you work within that. So I really enjoy that. The kids are unbelievable. My youngest daughter now is a junior in high school. My one's out of college. My one's will be done pretty soon, and so we're getting her through high school, and then we'll probably look at some other things. But pro hockey, I really liked it, and that's probably what I'd be looking at some point, going back to that. And but I think you get to a certain point where you're younger. I want to do this, and I want to be this coach and be there. And I think you realize the significance of what you do isn't based on the geography of where you're coaching. It's where you're at and what you're doing and how you are impacting them. Whether it's a bunch of 5-year-olds on the ice or a bunch of 30-year-olds in pro hockey. And I think if you take that approach, then everything that happens is real positive, and good things will happen. And like I said, I love where I'm at right now. I'm real happy, and my family's happy. So we'll take that a little bit at a time. But I could see down the road probably going back to pro hockey.
Good. Well, Coach, It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have a fellow Spartan. We wish you all the best of luck. Good thing about your team is everybody can cheer for it.
That's right.
Right?
We don't get booed very often.
We're not going to get booed very often.
No.
We're probably not going to
Not
be
at all.
cheering down the road for that team at Ann Arbor, but we can cheer for your team. You know?
Exactly.
Thank you, Coach. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. For Jason Strayhorn, I am Brian Mossallam. You are watching Behind the Highlights. Thank you. Have a good